remember my big refrain from a couple lessons ago? Strong visual stories at any level rely on visuals. Again, it sounds so like self-evident and obvious, but I gotta say, it's really important, and it's something that is often overlooked and not really taken advantage of by a lot of filmmakers. This applies to all levels of storytelling, no matter how linear or simple. Visual storytelling is visual. As long as you are telling a visual story about your trip, you need to have something to look at. It needs to be more visual than just, I went here and I did this and I'm telling you about it. Show me. Using visuals to stitch together your story so that viewers can seamlessly process that story is just the most important part of this craft. I've said it 1,000 times, I'm going to continue to say it. Combine that with the other piece of advice, which is to think in scenes. Remember we talked about that in the structure? And now your trip turns into you hunting for visual evidence that you can construct into little scenes and then move around in a structure to build a story. By visual evidence, what I mean is any visual that aids the viewer in understanding the story. Back to the Netherlands video. Remember, I'm thinking in terms of scenes. So let's go back to this moment where I'm getting on the train to go up to the north, to that island of Texel. In terms of the story, what I was trying to do here is go to the northern part of the country to show how the wind and waves are really intense. That's a big part of the story. If you've watched it, you'll know why. I could have done this a couple of ways. I could have just said to the camera, hey, the waves and wind in the north are really intense, and showed a stock photo of the waves in the north of the Netherlands to show that there's a lot of erosion in the north. That would have been visual evidence, but it would have been kind of weak visual evidence. Instead, I was making an argument that the North Sea is very intense and is very eroding of the northern coast of the Netherlands. And so I decided to make visual evidence that was more compelling, to go there and to actually look at it and to show myself going out onto that beach and feeling the wind and the intensity.
This battle between the Netherlands and the ocean is now much more real for me.
That's a much more powerful version of visual evidence. When you're on your trip, you are hunting for visual evidence, the thing that shows the viewer what you're trying to say. And as you become more focused on this hunt for visual evidence, as you know what your visual evidence is, your trips will feel different. You'll be looking around and say, oh, I'm trying to show that there are lots of fry shops in Belgium. Now when you're going around, you'll be like, oh, there's a fry shop, I'm gonna get that. Because during the section, when I talk about there being a lot of fry shops, I want my visual evidence to be 5 cuts to 5 different clips of fry shops to prove, to show, not just tell, but to show that indeed there are a lot of fry shops in Belgium. This is visual evidence, and it is so much more powerful than you speaking words that say there are a lot of fry shops in Belgium. Visual evidence is vital, and your trips should turn into hunting for visual evidence to enhance your story.
Capturing visual evidence is going to rely on a lot of things that I talked about earlier on in this chapter, right? Reducing friction and making it easier for yourself to always be a few seconds away from capturing moments. And it's actually pretty incredible because there have been stories that I've told that have really relied on moments that I've captured even before realizing that an important piece of the story that I wanted to tell was unfolding. The reason that I say this is because one approach that I think works really well for me, at least, is tying together abstract ideas that I like talking about and exploring with action. And that action can be evidence for the things that I'm talking about. You know, I'm taking something lofty and detached and intangible and abstract and tying it together with a very easy to follow along, trip somewhere. You can be there with me in those vlog moments that I capture. And so what I'm talking about here is tying multiple different elements together, which I think can be huge. Okay, so I'm gonna offer yet another example here of what I'm talking about. I really love talking about language learning. It's a huge passion of mine. It's something that I just really personally enjoy, and I just find that there's been so much value that I've gotten from learning new languages. It has enriched my life. It has opened new doors and new countries, honestly. I've been able to discover and have all these different experiences that I would never be able to have without foreign languages. There's one specific video that I want to focus in on here to illustrate my point, which was called The Fastest Way to Learn a Foreign Language, the Solar System Theory. It can get quite technical because I have very specific ideas of how I like to approach languages, and I wanted to share that as clearly as possible. However, my mantra is that language is experiential. And I really wanted to show that. I didn't want to just say that. It's not as powerful, it's not as impactful. And we've already covered that as I've kind of reviewed previous samples of my work. Put a pin in that for a second. In October of last year, I learned how to drive stick in Portugal with a friend, a Belgian friend of mine who runs his own YouTube channel, Greg's Way, very talented guy and total adventurer. He and I were road tripping in an old Volkswagen Beetle. Like, I really wanted to learn how to drive stick, and we thought it'd be a cool idea to kind of document the experience without any real specific goal for that material. Because my friend is from Belgium and is a French speaker, this all took place in French.
Stop. Ouais. Voilà. Une fois que c'est démarré, il faut lâcher. Je peux... tu peux lâcher, ouais. Nathan va apprendre à conduire une boîte à vitesse manuelle, chose qu'il n'a jamais faite de sa vie.
Now, at the time, like I said, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to use that material, but it ended up being the perfect complement to my theories on language learning. And so I ended up using what I captured that day, and I sort of laced it through my video so that it's in the beginning to create a little bit of tension, you know, a cool little visual montage. And I reference it visually throughout my very technical explanation. And then I also use it to tie everything together towards the end of the video. In many ways, this is, you know, an example for how I'm using my life as evidence for the things that I'm talking about. We can all talk about philosophy and share ideas about what life is about, but I think it's even more powerful to capture your life and to share that with people in an intimate, vulnerable way.